Hello and welcome to Eavesdropping at the Movies. I'm Mike.
And I'm José.
And we've seen Robin Hood. The new Robin Hood. There have been so many.
Yes.
The new one with Taron Egerton as the Hood / Robin of Loxley. At no point, there's one point where the film threatens to do and here's the title of the film bits, where he says, I don't mind if you call me Robin of Loxley, I don't mind if you call me the Hood. You think he's going to go, in fact, call me Robin Hood. Luckily it avoids that.
It doesn't avoid much else.
Though it wouldn't have been entirely out of place. There is quite a lot of corniness in it.
Yes. Well, corniness has been kind. I think there's a lot of ineptitude to the whole thing.
It avoids it, and I guess in a way you don't kind of see why. Like another thing it avoids pretty assiduously is Sherwood Forest, which is sort of centre to so much of the action of the Robin Hood story.
This is such a wrong-headed movie.
And it's Sherwood Forest, well, they mention it twice. In fact, they mention the forest, and then they mention Sherwood Forest, and when you see him in the forest right at the end, you go, oh, that's Sherwood Forest, and it turns out that's not even Sherwood Forest.
It's
weird.
It's
all set in this kind of town around the castle and the church, which are imposing. I mean, it's kind of an interesting setting, but it departs.
It's like they tried to make a steampunk movie, but in medieval times.
That's not quite true. It's not steampunk exactly. They do. Ugh. There are some weird inventions with technology where you have. I mean, I think actually that's one of the charming things about it, where you see Robin in the Crusades, and it's filmed like Black Hawk Down. I said to you in the cinema.
It's filmed like they were doing the Iraq War, but with arrows.
Exactly.
The way
I mean, it's a very very simple sort of metaphor.
Yeah.
But one of the things that they have is like rocket launchers, but with arrows, and bazookas, but with arrows, and these kind of surface to air missiles, but with arrows. Which I thought was kind of fun.
Well, that's kind of where I was getting by steampunk, but in medieval times.
That's what I mean. But that's the limit of it.
Well, no, because there's also the reason for having the mines. And making everything so dark, and I think they are trying for a look. And actually, I do think that the design and again the costumes are very interesting. But it's the kind of thing that if they had said this is Robin Hood in an alternate universe, it would have made sense, right? Because they're wearing kind of those futuristic kind of costumes, really.
Well, they're out of place. Futuristic is. I think what's misleading about the word steampunk is steampunk means it like sci-fi, a sci-fi combination of sort of futuristic technology with the past. I mean, normally it's like the 1800s, in Victorian times. You're talking about that. I don't think is what this film's doing, with the exception of those bits of arrow weaponry
and the building of the underground trains. Before there were any tracks or trains, it has a few elements. But the arrows themselves.
But that is, I think that the subtlety is that is not like sci-fi technology. It's just out of place. The same way that his jacket, is out of place. You just wouldn't have had they wouldn't have sewing machines back then.
I'm not saying that it's a steampunk film, but it's very much like that and set in medieval times. And part of the reason why I say it's like that is because it's so dark. Everything takes place underground. It has kind of, that rusty urban feel rather than, medieval Nottingham of, the Crusades, right? I mean, all the streets are paved and they're all kind of glossily paved rather than kind of muddy with carts,
Yes.
So, I mean...
Everything's out of place.
Yeah, it's this combination of the mixing of the past and
well, it's not even... it feels like it's not even that deliberate. It's just... They haven't gone to great pains to make sure that they're being quote-unquote historically accurate. I mean, Robin Hood is not... a real person. So
but
there's a limit to historical accuracy. But they do start off the film by saying, what's the voiceover say? He says,
well, everything you expect of Robin Hood.
Yeah, no, but the very first lines are really important because it's Tim Minchin, I think, doing the voiceover. He's Friar Tuck, and he says, "I could tell you the year, but I honestly can't remember. I tell you it's historically accurate, but you wouldn't be interested." Something like that. It sets up the audience as people who aren't going to care about history, which is a weird thing to do.
I mean, Well, I don't think so, because, I mean, clearly they're going to disregard it. You see, so, whatever term you want to use, there's a deliberate look and design for the film, which is kind of, it does draw on, I think, steampunk, or, all the fire, the mines, the urban, grotty poverty without light that does have kind of a Victorian feel to it, actually. And then these, like, super grand palaces and cathedrals, and, that almost look like spaceships, actually. And really, the costumes, which wouldn't be out of place in an episode of Star Trek. So, to me, that's a deliberate design and a deliberate look. There's something that the film is going for with that. Right.
It certainly seems to be kind of trying to muddy the waters. Like I say, and I think that those opening lines are directly pointing in that direction when he says, like I say, it says something about you'd be bored by the history.
Well, it's true. I mean, it is pointing you in a certain direction. The question is it successful? And I thought this was, like, terribly misjudged on almost every level.
I don't know. I didn't hate a lot of that, to be honest. Like I said, I think there was some charm in the Crusades sequences.
Oh, I hated it.
Like I said, I think it's what is difficult to tell is how much of a sense of humour the film has about itself. It's difficult to tell how down the line it's trying to convince you of this kind of, like I say, Black Hawk Down kind of war thing it's got going, or how much of it is light-hearted. Like when you see shoulder-mounted bazookas with a rack full of arrows, and they're being shot, and it's kind of handheld cameras and all this sort of thing.
I don't mind that. I would have welcomed that, actually.
Well, that's what was there.
Well, but the reason why I don't welcome it is not because it's like handheld bazookas rather than real arrows that are appropriate to the period. Yeah. The reason why I hated that whole scene is because the action is so badly shot, and you can't see anything, and you're dizzy, and you can't see where the arrow is going, or who it's hitting, and it was just so blunt and overdone, and I hated the accents. I hated that Egerton still has a Cockney accent playing Robin of Loxley, right? Kind of, there were just so many elements that seemed kind of misjudged and out of place, and also you think they were going for something and they were not quite achieving it. So, the moment where John's Jamie Foxx's son is killed, kind of that's meant to be a moment of high melodrama. It's kind of so badly done.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think a lot of it is pretty badly done. Don't get me wrong. I think a lot of the dialogue for it.
Good.
With regards to the action, I don't throw my hands up at kind of action where things are kind of cut quickly. You can't see everything. I mean, we do talk a lot about being able to see actions completed and being able to kind of tell where you are on the scene and that sort of thing. And I think often that's important, and often it can be distracting. And in this film, I think it is a bit, but also, I mean, the Bourne Ultimatum wouldn't have worked if it had been shot like.
But I love the Bourne Ultimatum, so that's good, right? So it's a reminder that there's many ways, that one can make action exciting, and maybe my going on about seeing the action completed is, just one of the ways. But certainly whatever way they tried with this,
it's muddled,
it failed,
and it's reasonably incompetent.
I mean, I think the Bourne films have a certain thrill, and they're cut to particular rhythms, and actually they don't let you see a completed action, but what they do show you is pretty spectacular, and it's its own thrill done in a different way, I think. But this was I was bored.
But I don't kind of throw my hands up at it just because it was doing one thing instead of the other. It was just doing it badly. I mean, it's possible for the kind of action it's doing to be done really, really well, and it just wasn't.
I thought when I read all the reviews, I thought, I don't care. I'm going to see it, and I bet that it's at least fun. And then kind of when I read it had such terrible reviews, I said, oh, I don't care. I bet you it's the kind of thing that if I see it on TV, I'll probably end up watching it or whatever. And actually, I came out of it like
Yeah.
thinking it was even worse than everybody had told me. And I'm kind of angry about it as well, actually.
Well, I can tell.
Well, yes, because, you know, this is such a huge budget film, and it's got such an amazing cast. You know, it's a really great cast. It's a dream cast in many ways. And to end up with this kind of incompetent shit it really offends me. My first thought was, who is this bloody, you know, fucking Otto Bathurst who got to make this film? You know, it's so crap. And actually, he's a first-time filmmaker. So for a first-time filmmaker, you know, to have gotten $100 million to come up with this is really quite something.
He's done a lot of TV. He won a BAFTA for Peaky Blinders. He's done Black Mirror, Criminal Justice.
Well, he hasn't made a movie.
Hustle, a few other things. So, I mean, he's competent enough on sort of TV. But, you know, I don't know whether, who knows, kind of what got out of hand or whatever on this. But it is sort of all over the place. There are lines of dialogue as well, which I think there are points. I mean, for one thing, it's the whole start of the film is doing tell, don't show instead of show, don't tell.
Yeah.
Where Tim Minchin's voiceover is getting so absurdly sort of in your face and annoying, where he's going, "This isn't the story that you think you know. You know, forget everything you think you know about Robin Hood. He wasn't this thief first, he was someone else." And you go, just leave it, man. I know that you're going to show me the origin story of Robin Hood, whatever way you don't have to kind of pound it into me that like, oh, I didn't know this special. Really wound me up.
I hated so much. You know, one of the things that drove me crazy about it?
Yeah.
You think, it's fucking Robin Hood, right? And here, like, the whole film looked battleship grey with amber tones, you know. It looked like it had been made in a submarine.
It was extremely badly lit at points. I mean, there are shots where a shot of F. Murray Abraham, for instance, as the Cardinal. There's a shot of him where it's like it's his intimidating close up, and his face is entirely in shadow. It's really, really weird. Yeah. They just didn't like that. I couldn't understand why that was. Yeah. And that's not just that shot. There's a lot with Ben Mendelsohn as well. Again, kind of looking intimidating. I mean, and he's just in this kind of blank shadow. It's weird.
And like so many things bothered me. So Egerton has this Cockney accent. Mendelsohn has this Australian. You know, it's all in Sherwood Forest, right? Like, you know, they've not even tried to come up with a scheme, you know, for accents or anything.
I didn't think he had his Australian. Tim Minchin had his Australian. You could hear it poking through.
Well, for me, I could hear, you know, Mendelsohn's poking through. But anyway, those are even kind of minor things in relation. I thought also he gave a very bad performance, Mendelsohn. And
he should have been camping it up some more. When F. Murray Abraham comes in,
he's
doing his Italian, "I am in charge of this." You know, that he's fantastic.
He's fantastic.
And he gets the tenor of what everything else should be.
And actually, I thought Jamie Foxx was fantastic. You know, I
was very good.
I really enjoyed him, and I like Jamie Dornan.
Jamie Dornan, yeah.
Yeah, a lot as well. So, you know, you have kind of an extraordinary cast, you know, and some of them are actually very good, but they just can't bring the film out of it. And actually, part of the problem is Egerton. You know, I don't think he has the charm and the hardiness, and, you know, I think he's miscast in this, actually. And also, I didn't even like his body, right? And maybe it's my own prejudice, because you always think of, like, Robin Hood as being lithe and athletic and, you know, being able to leap and, you know, and do all kinds. And actually, they have this moment where they show him with his shirt off, and he looks like the Thing. He's just like this huge muscle mass, right? Which feels like all wrong for this film.
It doesn't feel wrong for this film, but it feels wrong for me. It feels what you know of Robin Hood. That's the difference. In this film, I think it makes perfect sense because they're turning it into more of a kind of Guy Ritchie inflected sort of Guns and Geezers version of the folk sort of myth. So, you know, you see this kind of training montage where he's kind of pulling massive chains and becoming big and strong and so on. So when you see him with his top off and he is this enormous thing, it makes sense from everything that you've seen that's what they were building him to be.
Yeah, well, you know, we have a different view of this because I think, you know, when you're that big, you're not live. Your muscles are all
that's what I mean.
Up.
I think, you know, it might be wrong-headed. For the concept might be wrong-headed, but it makes sense within this film because I think the whole film is kind of built to make people kind of big and strong, and as opposed to kind of lithe and sort of
witty and athletic,
agile, and all that sort of thing. Like,
yeah.
I mean, but it doesn't make sense in a way because he's supposed to be kind of good at sneaking and stuff as well. Doesn't add up. Like, you think he'd be better at just punching down a wall.
Yes, exactly.
But
it's very ill conceived.
Yeah. I mean, he is miscast. I think. I like him, right? I do like him.
I like him.
He has a certain charm and a certain kind of twinkle.
Yeah,
you see that in Kingsman. I mean,
I love him in Kingsman, but I think he's very miscast.
But he is miscast here. He doesn't, and I don't think he can carry it. And but I
think they should have cast Jamie Dornan as Robin Hood.
Oh, maybe.
Well,
no, I'm not going to speculate.
He has the cheekiness and he has the charm, and he could throw an arrow as well.
I don't know, but I mean, I think he's cast well as his character.
He's very good.
But I think that there's this kind of, it sets up a sequel at the end where he's going to be the new baddie, which is interesting. I don't think he'll make a good one.
I don't think there'll be a sequel considering how how this is done.
Sure, I mean, it is flopping like hell. I want to talk about. I had a problem with the kind of central conception of the character in a way of Robin Hood, where so obviously the film is doing it's doing an origin story. Where it says, this he wasn't Robin Hood at first. He was Robin of Loxley. He was a lord, and he's sort of privileged and what have you, and he owns stables with horses and a big castle, and then he gets sent off to the Crusades, and when he comes back, everything's sort of been taken from him. Like the castle, his home has been, whatever the word, possessed. Not possessed, but repossessed by the sheriff of Nottingham, and all this stuff's kind of been taken. People think he's dead. I mean, there's this kind of vague hint. You might think that they told everyone he was dead so that they could repossess his stuff. Either way,
that's the implication.
That seems to be the implication. It was to me at least. He sort of has nothing, and people are surprised even to find that he's alive. He keeps himself quiet, and he develops into Robin Hood. And what is Robin Hood, right? Well, the famous thing is he steals from the rich and gives to the poor. He's this, sort of revolutionary leader figure, in kind of English folk history. Obviously, completely fictional, but that's his kind of that's the centerpiece. That's the central thing of his story. And I mean, I was thinking about this, and I was thinking in comparing it to the Errol Flynn one, in terms of the conception of the character. So that character, the Errol Flynn one, is kind of everything you think of as a classic hero. Kind of self-possessed and witty and in charge of everything and does things himself and can't be beat and all this kind of stuff. And there's no origin story to Errol Flynn's Robin Hood. You see him at the start of the film and he is fully formed. He is the hero right at the beginning. And in here, obviously, Robin Hood is not. But in terms of him becoming Robin Hood, it's not until, probably, it must be more than halfway into the film, must be much more than halfway into the film, that he actually does something of his own accord. He's told what to do by everyone all the time, particularly John, who comes back with him from the Crusades, and said, John's the one who drives everything, right? John's the one who says, I want to start a revolution. I hate the people in power. I hate this, that, and the other. But I've lost my hand, so I can't fire an arrow anymore. So you're going to do it with me because you helped. You tried to save my son. So I see something in you.
I bet you, Foxx had a hand in it. Because I'm sure that in order to get him in the film, the screenplay had to be reworked. And the biggest. He is the biggest name in the film. Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to talk about kind of where it might come from, but the effect of it is that I didn't see why Robin was who he was. He didn't even have... I get that, okay, he wants to win Marion back, because he was going out with her at the start, and then blah, 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 she leaves him, and blah, blah. So he wants to win her back. That's his kind of central motivation, which isn't that strong. I mean, you don't see it that much either. He's just sort of dispossessed and a bit grumpy about it. But in terms of anything else, he doesn't have any beliefs. He doesn't believe in... the awful kind of conditions that he's seeing. He doesn't believe in the injustice of the people at the top taking everything and overtaxing the poor and this war effort and so on. He doesn't have any belief. He just follows what John tells him to do.
No, that's not quite right, because it all stems from him, which I didn't understand either, but it all stems from him trying to rescue John's son from being beheaded, and as a result, shooting at his own comrades and freeing up all the prisoners of war, which actually makes no sense, at all. So, kind of that's a moment which is meant to somehow tell us of, how he will become Robin Hood, but it doesn't work.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think it completely fails. Like, I mean, that scene makes sense as far as, he sees this. He sees them beheading people that they have no reason to behead because they're no threat.
You're so generous, Mike. This is as bad as a film gets.
No, that scene makes sense. These people are being kept prisoner. They're no threat. They're not armed. The one, the kid who kind of sets him off is John's kid. He's a boy. He's like, he's 18 years old or something, maybe younger. So, these people are in a situation where they're being sent to war just as he is,
yes,
and his friends. That's so that he would kind of see commonality between him and the prisoners, and find that these executions are brutal and unnecessary. Makes perfect sense.
But to me it doesn't, because there's a contradiction between finding what is being done to that boy immoral, and to shoot at his own comrades. Which is what he does. He throws arrows at his own colleagues, the people who he's been fighting with. That makes no sense to me at all.
Well, I'd watch that scene again. I mean, I'm not saying you're wrong. That's not what I mean by that. But I mean, I would watch that scene again to actually see it's like a Greedo shoots first sort of thing, where he uses his sword to block the axe coming down. But then, as to how the fight then develops and who shoots who first, I can't remember. I genuinely just can't remember.
I mean, to me, there's one thing about trying, to prevent this murder from happening, or, this beheading from happening, which is heroic and it makes sense to me, right? But think of the analogy. Think, like you said, if this was Black Hawk Down, if this was a film kind of set, in Iraq now or whatever, and in order to try to save one of the enemy being shot, a guy turns on and shoots at all his own comrades. I mean, that just makes that.
But that's what I'm saying.
Unforgivable.
But my point is, I don't remember if that is exactly how the scene develops. The difference between him stopping the axe coming down and then them attacking him, the difference between that and him attacking them first, is important.
But but this is the thing, because the them and him, it's meant to be we. They're fighting on the same side.
Well, but we're talking about something specific that happened in this film. Him and his fellow troops. Like, it's fair enough to use the words they and he at the moment.
But what I'm trying to say is that the scene makes no sense, because he ends up shooting at the people who he's fighting a foreign war with, who he not presumably, we're told he's been there for 2 years, right? So it just
4 years.
Or 4 years. So it makes no sense.
I don't think it makes no sense, though. Like, it's like an Edward Snowden thing. It's like, this is the point where he goes, I can't do this. I can't back up what's happening here.
Okay,
that makes perfect sense.
It doesn't make any sense to me, but,
It doesn't make any sense to you. You think he should just go along with it?
I can't understand, and I think it would be inconceivable for a soldier to shoot at his own comrades. It just doesn't make any sense.
Well, like I say, I mean, you keep on saying he shoots at them, and that implies to me shoots at them first before any retaliation. And I can't remember if that's how that scene goes. I can't remember if they shoot at him first because he stops the axe coming down. Well, that's the one thing he definitely does.
They end up shooting him at the end. That's for sure, because he gets an arrow, right? And the arrow comes from somewhere, and I don't think it just.
But after he stops that blade coming down, can you tell me that you remember who starts the shooting? I can't.
Well, I can't, actually. But he does that.
And I think it is an important distinction.
And he also frees all of the prisoners of war, right? So, and actually, kind of, the sergeant or whatever shoots him just so he can get him out of his way and go back home. So actually, I think, within a certain... Because the film is trying to make an analogy between what happens there, and, what is happening now in the Middle East, right? So I think, anyway, by that criteria, his actions are not comprehensible to me.
Okay. But the larger point that I was making at first is that I think that he's weak as a hero. Like, I get the idea that they're trying to make him develop into a hero, and that's fine. But I think so little of it actually comes from him. Even if it was a case of him kind of learning things, like learning what the situation is like for people in the gutter, and then and learning about how they're being exploited by the people at the top. It doesn't do any of that, right? So it's like I say, he's told basically by John, let's start a revolution, and every kind of moment along the way, John says, we need to do this, we need to do this, we need to do this, we need to train.
The film is so mixed up because you can see how in a way they're trying to make a comic book superhero out of him, right? They give him an origin story, they give him a secret identity, which actually in other versions of Robin Hood he doesn't have a secret identity, so here they give him a secret identity, and then actually they reveal the identity anyway, so kind of...
Well, reveal it to certain people at different times.
But that even doesn't make sense. You're revealing it to kind of everybody who works in the mines, and you imagine, well, that kind of the sheriff is going to know about that tomorrow. You think he doesn't have spies in the mine?
I think that's taking too practical a point of view on it. That scene where he reveals his identity to everybody is the scene of him, sort of taking control of his destiny and making the point about who he is and putting his trust in everyone else. Twice he says in that scene, I need you. And no point does he say, you need me. That scene is all about, I need your help. And it's about him putting his trust in everybody else. And giving his identity to them is the biggest way of doing that.
Then why go to the trouble of making it a secret identity beforehand, except that, comic book superheroes now have a secret identity.
Well, it's a secret at first because they need some people to not know who he is while they're stealing shit.
It's very unimaginative.
Oh God,
and very inconsistent. And very badly done. I mean, even that scene that you're talking about, it's so poorly done.
Yeah, that scene is really badly done. I mean, I wanted to bring that up. I wanted to say that he gives it's Will who's giving a speech to everyone saying we need to do this, that and the other, and then he pops in at the back saying, no, I'm Robin of Loxley, here I am. And when he's giving this speech that's supposed to be the inspiring blah blah blah, and here's my identity, he keeps on turning his back to the camera. Like, I get that there are people standing all around him, so he's trying to address everyone in this scene at once. But actually, like, there are ways of staging that and performing it that don't involve you just turning away from the camera all the time. It's really weird to look at.
So you see, we're just kind of going on, and you mount a little defense and find something nice to say.
No, I'm saying there are plenty of problems, but there are really interesting things as well beneath it. I think there are interesting ideas. Okay, I think the sense of revolution is really palpable and really strong, and the energy. So it doesn't have the lightness of tone that your Errol Flynn one does. But then I don't think your Errol Flynn one could convey the kind of seriousness of feeling of revolution that this does.
Well, seriously, it's relative. I think it tries to do that, and I think it does so in quite a banal and unconvincing fashion, really. It's kind of... And, there's a whole series of films that are kind of making those analogies now. I mean, it's not new or original, in making that analogy, or kind of... and certainly not in making it exciting,
Well, I didn't say it's an analogy. I didn't say it's new or original. But I said it's actually... I think it's quite energetic and quite bracing at points. You feel these people... You feel their fight, their energy.
Well, I didn't feel that. And I always got kind of taken out of the drama by things like, the way people spoke. I kind of... the only thing that I can find good to say about it is I did actually like, aspects of the design and the clothes. Like, you feel there's an interest... There was an interesting project at some point. Like, you could tell somebody was interested in kind of doing something interesting with that, that somehow hasn't come across. And I also very much like some of the performers. I do think kind of the direction is atrocious, like on so many different levels. And that includes the direction of actors, right? Because you can see how, some people are just really good, and other people who are normally really good don't come off at all. right? And none of the performances have a consistency of tone. Actually, every time Tim Minchin appeared...
Tim Minchin.
Tim Minchin. Okay, every time he appeared, it was like...
I didn't like him at all. I thought he was miscast too.
Yes, he's terrible.
I mean, he's not... I don't know why people... I don't know why he's been cast. He's not an actor, as far as I'm aware, really. He's a comedian and a singer, but it's not a... I've never seen him act before.
No, well, he's not very good.
No.
And every time he opens his mouth, it kind of gets the film out of, whatever kind of mood or world it had begun to coalesce. He snaps it onto, like, some other thing.
Well, they try and use him as comic relief, essentially. Like, he's Friar Tuck, who is kind of constantly a little bit out of his depth or that sort of thing.
But he's not funny.
But he's not... Yeah, I mean, he's just not funny.
Yeah.
But I did like that he and Marion are staging their own revolution. I don't know if that's in other versions of the story, but I very much liked this because I didn't see it coming. So you've got it's that scene at the kind of high society party in the church where there's gambling and debauchery and blah blah blah. And it's like the priests being surrounded by women and stuff, kind of classic sort of corruption of the church stuff. I mean, in fact, we talked in the Widows podcast about the way that film. Every time you see the church in that film, it's about political intrigue and corruption and power and money. And it's like, well, it's the same in Robin Hood. Interestingly, like the conception of the church is identical, really.
Yes, it has been like that for a long time.
But so in that scene, you've got Robin and John working to kind of work their way into a society, the upper echelons of society, so they can whatever just foment their revolution. But what you see as well, unbeknownst to Robin and John, is that Marion and the Friar are working together too to do something similar, and out of nowhere, so you get a scene where they're in like a basement, kind of talking about what they're going to be doing at the party, and like their version of the revolution, and it's similar to the John and Robin scenes where they're doing the same thing, which I thought was great because like you get this feeling of, again, that helps to communicate that this revolution isn't coming from out of nowhere. Like, other people feel the same way. It's not like Robin comes along and starts it.
I just don't find that as like exciting or praiseworthy as you do.
I thought it was interesting.
My thing is like, so what?
Well, when you say so what, I mean, what the film could very easily have done, what I was expecting it to do, was to have Robin come along and say, I'm going to lead a revolution. But actually, it goes, he's not the only one. He and John aren't the only ones. There is feeling elsewhere. I thought, it's a subtlety, but I liked it.
Well, I don't think it's that much of a subtlety, and other versions of Robin Hood have that as well. And actually, I mean, I just think that Robin Hood is kind of one of those things where you can create a whole new narrative by just kind of, taking a few elements from it, right, that are recognizable. So, people actually have a lot of freedom in what they do within kind of, those elements, or that matrix of elements. And I just think this is a very kind of unexciting iteration of it, actually. I was bored by the end. I kept looking at my watch, and it's almost like I was angry, and then I got fed up of being angry. I just got bored of being angry because, I was kind of annoyed by what I think is the sheer ineptitude of this film.
It's really badly directed. We can agree on that for sure. And there are this awful dialogue as well. But I don't think it's as stupid as it looks. It looks very stupid. I couldn't tell anyone that it's good, and I couldn't tell anyone to go and see it. And there are weird lacks like where are the tights? I want to see someone in tights, and like I say, Sherwood Forest nowhere to be seen. But then on the other hand, these stories are there to be retold in different ways, are there to be reconfigured.
Well, that's all right. I don't have any problem with that. Kind of my problem is this particular iteration of it. Kind of, one sees many versions of Robin Hood, and kind of, and just the basic structure of the story is even kind of used in many other genres. I don't have any problem with that. But, I wondered, how was this cast, sold on this project? Like, what did they tell them they were going to do to make them get on board, right? Because you get the feeling it's not just a paycheck. I mean, there must have been something that, some kind of grand idea, that somehow just wasn't very well done. And actually, I suspect that you're right, that it was probably that, there are things that the film is trying to do that you think are interesting. So, for example, it's very kind of, it's a very mixed world. There's people of color all over England. Yeah, there's kind of, making a hero out of a Muslim, right? Who is a dominant figure in a way that, Little John isn't in any of the other Robin Hoods. I mean, yeah, so I think the film is a critique of the church, a critique of power, and of corruption, and of war, right? Kind of, I wonder if all of that was kind of, what people were pitched that this film was going to be about. Because otherwise their signing on is very inexplicable. So, the attempt to deal with those issues, and also, the look and design of the film, which I think is very badly filmed, but there's something interesting in the thing itself. It's part of a concept, right? That clearly doesn't come off, but you can see that there was a concept behind it.
I do like the central setting when you see those establishing shots. I mean, they're all CGI, but they're essentially bird's eye view shots of Nottingham, and it's a town with the enormous church at the top. They're sitting like on a hill, like a haunted house, and all the kind of buildings below where people work and live. As you say, like, not a bit of greenery in sight. The forest somewhere else, but. I liked that setting. I liked the way it looked. And I liked how, it looked one way right at the start of the film, and then when Robin returns 4 years later, it's become such a dirty shithole. You see all the difference. It's become just black and grey and sooty and there's smoke everywhere and that sort of thing. So that kind of sense of, you know what the place used to be. It's not like it's always been like this. This place used to be beautiful. I liked. And I guess that there is a sense of like it means that there's something more to fight for. If it had been set in Sherwood Forest, it might feel a bit. I don't know. Well, I mean, I don't know how they would have done it, but it might feel more kind of open or like. I mean, one of the things about the Errol Flynn one is that Sherwood Forest it's pretty empty sometimes. Like, they just wander around in it for an awful long time sometimes, especially early on when they're just meeting people.
Yes.
Whereas the sense of crowded, the sense of kind of people forced to live close together and kind of try and grab what they can and that sort of thing. It's quite palpable in this.
It is. Yeah. I don't like it. I think the film has an odd, weird look, and certainly it's not what one associates with Robin Hood. It is really kind of noirish, I suppose you could make a very interesting noirish Robin Hood, but again, this is not it.
I did like when it came to the fight scene towards the end, the climax, where the revolution kind of is in full sway, and they go and take on the sheriff's army. It was basically like riot footage from the past sort of 5-10 years in the
from
UK.
Paris yesterday.
Was there a riot in Paris yesterday?
Yes, they're rioting and burning things over the price of oil.
Oh, really?
Over the price of petrol. Sorry.
Oh, right. I didn't know.
Well,
did they have the riot shields and kettling and all that sort of thing? Because that was the feeling you got here. Well, they didn't show kettling in this, but
they did show kettling.
No,
they had the men with the shields.
Yeah, but kettling is when you get all around and you put all the protesters in the middle.
Oh,
whereas
right.
in this it was one side and the other side clashing. But
okay.
But still, exactly, the riot shields and everyone, like you say, this is where the costume, it's not the way people dressed in the 15th century. It's they basically looked like hoodies from yesterday.
Yes.
With their t-shirts pulled up over their nose.
Yes.
And hoods on, lobbing Molotov cocktails.
Yes.
It was great. I mean, I really liked that.
Well, I mean, I don't mind the idea. I just kind of minded the execution. And again, it feels like there are kind of potentially interesting things that go nowhere or contradict each other or are badly filmed or, so kind of those things were I mean, for example, they have a chase sequence and it's two huge carts chasing after each other. Well, kind of, that's potentially exciting, but it isn't quite.
Yeah. I agree. They had sneaking scenes of kind of sneaking into the castle when he says, I want to do the big job, I want to get into the castle and get into the treasury, and he sneaks under the cart and so on and so forth. Like, should have been hugely exciting, wasn't.
It's so badly done. Yeah. There's no suspense at all.
No.
So
I agree. I mean, that's a problem. Like I say, don't look at me like I think the direction's good. I'm defending the film in a number of ways, and I think there are interesting things. But I agree with you that all of the execution, pretty much all of it, is extremely poor.
Let's end it.
Yeah. Don't be a misery guts.
All right. Thank you very much. You've been listening to Eavesdropping at the Movies.
We're on iTunes and SoundCloud and YouTube to listen to. On social media, we're on Facebook and Twitter, at Eavesdrop Movies on Twitter, and eavesdroppingatthemovies.com for the full list of all the movies we've done. We talked about the old Robin Hood, which, we liked more than this.
Much more than this.
It's actually more colourful.
It feels like the great classic it is in
comparison
to this. So Misery Guts says goodbye and thank you for listening.
Yeah, and the man with the lightness of spirits.
Is that you?
That's me. I'm generous, you see.
You are generous.
I steal joy from Misery Guts and just keep it to myself.
All right, goodbye.